I don't believe what I just saw.
This is one of the great moments in the history of baseball.
I believe in miracles. Yes!
Is this the dagger?
April 4th, on this day in sports. On this episode, a hero ties a legend. How to run your way to a World Series ring. The 88 Mets wreak havoc on Expos pitchers and Montreal gentlemen's clubs. Really? That guy did that? Okay, I'm not surprised she did that. The NHL stops kissing its sister. A scandalized college basketball program shuts it all down. Plus, Messier beats Gretzky at least once. Someone named Tuffy makes history. And the sports movie that made Jim from The Office have to wear a wig. All that and more coming up on this episode of This Day in Sports.
I noticed you did a little bit of a bit in the middle there. You
Yeah,
tried
yeah.
to do that. Okay, not surprised she did that. So you're like, is this to show to the audience you're reading a list?
Oh,
Is that what you're, is that a bit?
I don't think I thought it through that much. I just sort of tried to connect them.
Oh, I thought you were acting like, I didn't read that list.
No, I wasn't. Well, I know it's hard to tell sometimes. But no, anyway, let's just move on.
Sure.
I was
Okay.
really- I thought
So
that was
those are things that are going to come up in
those
the
are
show.
things that are going to come up.
Okay, that's fair. That's good.
I get it.
Little teaser. And as you should always know in this show, sometimes we tease things we
Yeah.
don't deliver on.
Yeah.
Yes. We
miss
try
them.
to, but sometimes
We move on.
in the excitement, we move on.
That's fair.
Yep.
Well, friends, all of this couldn't be possible without our friends from Cabin Barber and Gentleman Supply, our sponsor of the show. Cabin Barber and Gentleman Supply is where we are right now, sitting in leather furniture. My chair is way too big.
We're ensconced in leather.
Your couch is nice. This is a giant couch. Almost like one of those roadside attraction chairs. You're driving down the highway and you're like, we better stop for a photo on that giant like Muskoka chair.
Oh, yeah.
That's the kind of chair I'm sitting in right now.
It is.
It's not. It's a leather chair. It's not a Muskoka chair.
You're a 6'4" man, and
Yes.
you look very small.
Thank you. Thank
You
you.
do.
Let's say boy, maybe not man.
Yeah.
Or guy. I'm not a man yet.
Yeah.
Still working on it.
If you came to Cabin, you could be ensconced in leather or just ensconced in great service, could you not?
And you could show up ensconced in leather and they'd give you a great haircut, trim your beard. Because I assume if you're ensconced in leather, you probably have a giant beard. I just feel like that's the look I'm looking for there.
Yeah.
And just more than a haircut and a shave, Michael, it's also a chance to get some apparel that you might need or materials to do your face. Like, what do you got, shaving cream?
And I've said this before, but everybody who works here is outrageously nice.
Very nice
and
people.
very helpful. Anything if you've had questions, I'm sure they'd be great at answering them, helping you out. It's a
great.
fantastic place, and the staff are amazing too.
You can get gifts. You can get
Yep.
apparel. Apparently, can
Yeah,
you
oh,
get,
yeah,
can
yeah.
you get sweatshirts here?
The sweatshirt,
Apparently
we've
they
been
have really
begging
nice
them to give
sweatshirts.
us the sweatshirt. We haven't got it yet, but we're begging for it. But nice people, great stuff,
Yep.
smells fantastic.
It really does.
Smells like Frank, our producer here, Frank Russo. Frank smells great too. You ever noticed?
Yeah.
He does.
On a good day, he smells good.
I think you can tell when you listen to the podcast how good he smells.
You can smell Frank in these microphones. For more, check out cabinforlife.ca. That's our sponsor, friends. So what happened on April 4th, Matt? Any ideas?
Yeah. So in 1974, 23-year-old Herb Washington made his debut in an MLB uniform, suiting up for the Oakland A's in a game versus Texas. Herb Washington had never played minor league baseball and hadn't played a game since high school. However, he had recently set the world record for the 60-yard dash. He was signed by A's owner Charlie Finley strictly to be a pinch runner. So Washington appeared in 92 games that season without having a single plate appearance. He stole 29 bases and scored 29 runs and won a World Series ring that year. But in the playoffs, he was caught stealing twice without actually stealing a base successfully. He was released by Oakland early the next season and never played an MLB game again. Worth noting, he did steal 29 bases, but was caught stealing 16 times. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah.
Also, he was also drafted by the Baltimore Colts as a wide receiver in the 13th round of the 1972 draft.
There are lots of guys who were fast that weren't great base stealers, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's not just about speed, clearly, because he was, obviously about the fastest man on the planet at the time. And,
Yeah.
there's an art to it for sure.
I loved that there's a legendary baseball card, and it just says, it's Herb Washington standing there, and it just says PR for pinch runner. That's his position.
They never assigned him a position.
I think I'm not sure. I think on Baseball Reference it even says like pinch runner designated hitter, which makes no sense. The designated
Clearly
hitter.
not, yeah.
I also, reading around about him, I don't know if you guys saw this, but I kept seeing this bit about his contract requiring him to grow facial hair before the season, and he had trouble growing it, so I had to fill it in with an eyebrow pencil.
That was a big thing. Charlie Finley liked that. He wanted them all to like have mustaches and stuff.
Sideburns.
He wanted them to be characters.
Yeah.
Ah, okay. Just seemed like a weird
Yes,
contract thing.
It is.
And do you want me to quickly just add the McDonald's lawsuit with Herb Washington?
Yeah.
What
So Herb Washington owned a McDonald's, a large McDonald's. I think I went in several in Rochester, but he sued for racial discrimination, won $33 million. He owned 13 McDonald's restaurants.
Oh wow!
Whoa.
And he sued McDonald's.
Yep, and he won his lawsuit.
Wow.
Yep. That's right.
What a life.
Yep.
Not bad. You play 1 year of pro baseball. you win
Very
the World
interesting
Series.
life. Yeah, he became this massive McDonald's owner.
Wow.
He's a very successful businessman.
Oh, and
So
then
that
he
was. Go ahead.
opened a bunch of Burger Kings with that $33 million.
Burger King's.
So that was
His
1974.
revenge was
That
to order burger. Okay,
yeah.
got it. Okay.
I think that was a joke. I think that was a.
Yeah.
No, I squash jokes now, Matt. That's all I
right.
do now.
Step on them.
No, but that's an interesting. He had an interesting, and still going, still alive.
Yeah.
Still going. But an interesting guy. And Charlie Finley just always had to have some unique or just like some gimmick. He couldn't just let it be, So love him. Love Herb Washington.
April 4th, 1993, in Atlanta, Texas Tech's Sheryl Swoopes scored 47 points in the NCAA women's basketball tournament final versus Ohio State. She outscored the rest of her team as the Red Raiders won 84-82. Swoopes was obviously named the tournament's most outstanding player, setting a tournament record for the most points scored in a Final Four game, male or female, and was also 11 for 11 from the free throw line. She set the tournament record for the most points scored in a Final Four. She only had 31 in the semifinal game against Vanderbilt. She was National Player of the Year. She won the Naismith Award. She went on to be a three-time WNBA MVP, a six-time All-Star, three-time Defensive Player of the Year, and two-time scoring champion. Not many people in the WNBA or NBA have been both Defensive Player of the Year and a scoring champion. I think Jordan might be the only guy in the NBA who's done it.
Sure.
She is enshrined in both the Women's Basketball Hall of Fame and the Naismith Basketball Hall of Fame. She also was a sort of groundbreaker in 2005 because we talked about Jason Collins on this podcast once, about him being the first openly gay athlete. But she, while she was still playing, came forward and talked about her sexuality being sort of fluid. And this was in 2005, so she should get a little credit for that too, and doesn't quite. People kind of remember Jason Collins, but they don't talk about her. Obviously, she's like on the Mount Rushmore of women's basketball players, but also kind of a pioneer in that regard too. So shout out to Sheryl Swoopes.
Staying in the basketball world, in April 4th, 1985, Tulane University canceled the men's basketball program after several players were caught in a point-shaving scandal. The key culprit was their 6'10" star center, John Hot Rod Williams, rest in peace, who was named Metro Conference Player of the Year in '84. He was arrested for allegedly receiving thousands of dollars for ensuring the Green Wave didn't cover the point spread. He eventually was found not guilty. School president Iman Kelly said he intended to discontinue the program forever, but changed his mind eventually, and the team returned to action in 1989. Despite taking bird courses like driver's education and weightlifting, those are courses at the school. Driver's education, weightlifting. Williams was a C-D student at Tulane who was known for missing practices and poor work ethic. The scandal cost Williams a great deal of money as he fell from a surefire top 10 NBA draft pick to being selected late in the second round by the Cavs. But he ended up playing 13 NBA careers. NBA 13.
Wow.
He ran 13. That's 13 different people.
Just kept going back with a new mustache.
That's right. That's right.
Penciled it in.
He penciled
That
it
new
in.
guy looks familiar.
He played 13 NBA seasons.
Oh.
Yeah, sorry, guys. Not as impressive.
Not nearly as interesting.
NBA seasons, and was among the top 5 paid players in the game in the early 90s. So this was always interesting. He had a 7-year, $26.5 million contract to basically be a sixth man. Here's a thing for you guys, a fun little bit of trivia. So let's go. So it's 1990, 1991, NBA's top paid players. Can you name the top 5 paid players 90-91 NBA season? Any guesses who were the top 5 paid?
No, it wasn't Scottie Pippen.
Williams was number 2. Wow. Williams was number 2. Was not Scottie Pippen. No, they're all stars, by the way. It's not like someone you'd never heard of, other than maybe Hot Rod Williams if you're a pseudo fan of NBA. Patrick Ewing was the highest paid player in 1991. Williams is number 2.
Barkley
is number 4. Good job. Hakeem Olajuwon, number 3. Number 5 was Chris Mullin. Here's another little bit. In 1991, Danny Ferry made more money than Michael Jordan.
That's right. I remember that. Yeah.
Yeah. There's some weird contracts going on out there.
Yes.
I wonder how Jordan felt about that one.
I'm sure he didn't take it personally. He's not that kind of guy.
He's not that kind of guy.
He lets everything roll right off his back.
Yep.
I liked how that school president said he intended to discontinue the program
Forever.
For how long? Forever.
That's right.
Just feels like, he was pretty worked up about that.
Yeah, that's a little dramatic. A little dramatic.
They're emo.
Mr. Kelly.
Yeah.
We will salt the earth where the arena was.
Scorched earth. They call that.
Right.
Scorched earth policy.
Exactly.
Well, there you go. Interesting a little bit about Hot Rod. Over to, I believe, Mr. Matt Gibbon.
1986. Let's go to 1986 where Wayne Gretzky assisted on all...
Friend of the show.
That's right.
I'm going to keep saying that.
Until he comes on the show?
Yeah.
Okay.
But what Wayne did is he assisted on all 3 Oilers goals in the second last game of the season to break his own record for the most points in a season. Edmonton lost that game 9-3 to Calgary, by the way, but he finished the game with 214 points and would add one more assist 2 nights later to set a record of 215 points that still stands today, of course. That season was the 7th of 8 straight years where Gretzky led the NHL in points. He won the Hart Trophy in all 8 of those seasons, but the Art Ross in only 7 of them, losing a tie with Marcel Dion in 1979-80 because though they had the same amount of points, Dion had scored more goals. Dion had also played one more game, but Gretzky was fresher, I guess. So, but yeah, but that's still incredible. I mean, Gretzky holds 8 of the top 10 point scoring totals for a season.
Wow.
The other 5 and 8 are Mario Lemieux.
Right.
And the next 11 is Gretzky, 12 is Lemieux, 13 is Lemieux. Do you know the first player after Gretzky and Lemieux to have the most points in a season?
Is it? What's the number?
155 points.
Is it Steve Yzerman?
It is Steve Yzerman.
Yzerman
Great guess in the 88-89.
I remember that because I think that year, I believe also Yzerman was third team center all NHL.
Wow.
He had 155 points, but because Gretzky and Lemieux were ahead of him, he finished. Yeah. He was like the third team all-star center. Wow. What's the statistic with Gretzky? They always talk about he's the all-time goals leader, and if you remove goals from his points totals career, he's still the all-time points leader. Yeah. It's he's that far ahead of Messier that he's like...
he only needs assists.
Yeah. Friend of the show. We're looking forward to having him on again soon.
Wayne Gretzky.
On April 4th, 1983, NC State defeated Houston 54-52 in the final game of the NCAA men's basketball tournament. The Wolfpack won it on a putback dunk by Lorenzo Charles. I think you might remember this after Derek Wittenberg heaved a 30-foot desperation shot that went nowhere near the net. And Charles caught it and put it back in just as time expired. Led by head coach Jim Valvano, one of the great characters in college basketball history. That NC State team was one of the biggest upset winners in history, too. First of all, to beat that Houston team, which had Hakeem Olajuwon and Clyde Drexler.
Yeah.
Like 2 first ballot Hall of Fame players. And then, but also they were a 6 seed, and they had lost 10 games during the regular season. They were 17-10 going into the tournament. And their first tournament game, they won in double overtime against Pepperdine.
Yeah.
So you're like, they didn't exactly look like they were going to be,
No.
The only guy from that team who went on to play in the NBA was Thurl Bailey, who had a good long career. He played a dozen years in the NBA. But everybody else on that team, Sidney Lowe became a coach, but nobody else really had a great career. So that upset of Houston that's one of the big, wait, what? In March Madness history.
Absolutely. And the NC State, I'm trying to think of it. Yeah, I'm just saying. This is just me rambling in my own head. Oh, let me just get to my own thing. I shouldn't have said these things out loud. I kind of just thought out loud for no real reason.
This is on, right?
Yeah, this is happening. Let's start the show. Quick. April 4th. Okay, I'm just going to throw a quick one out there.
Yeah, why not?
A friend of the show. No, okay. 1987, Dennis Potvin of the New York Islanders. Denis Papins of the New York Islanders scored 2 goals to become the first defenseman to score 1,000 career points. He was the 21st player ever to reach the total and retired as the NHL's career leading scorer among D-men. He's now 7th on that list.
Right.
He retired at the top, now 7th on that list. Unbelievable Islander. And you're an Islanders fan, Mike. It must be up
I think
there.
that's a bar bet you could win a lot.
Yeah.
Who was the first defenseman to score 1,000 NHL points? Frank,
Yeah.
would you have gotten that? No.
That would take a while.
I think everybody would guess Bobby Orr
Coffee.
or Coffee.
Yeah.
I think it would
yeah.
take a while to get Dennis Potvin. I
Yeah.
don't think anybody would get that.
Yeah, I agree.
Unless somebody who, you know,
Well, we'll
was
go
listening to the podcast.
We'll go to the bar
Sure.
after this,
Yeah.
and we won't leave until
Somebody gets it.
right.
No hints. We're not leaving. No hints. Okay, that
hints.
was my quick one for you.
I'm gonna stay on hockey if that's okay. I'm gonna go to 1993. And what does this say? Are we talking April 4th, 1993?
Yeah.
With 9 seconds left in a 4-2 game against the New Jersey Devils, Mario Lemieux scores an empty net goal, his 62nd of the season, extending his goal streak to 11 straight games. Pretty impressive. He wouldn't score in the next game, but that's okay because he already had a 12-point goal scoring streak earlier in that same season. So this was the end of it. The last time he scored an 11 straight game goal scoring, and he already had a 12 game scoring streak earlier.
Over to you, Mike.
Let me just say this though. Let me just say this. This is not a quick hit.
I just started to sweat.
Lemieux finished with 69 goals that year, but only played 60 games. He had 160 points in 60 games.
Yikes.
The longest goal scoring streak, of course, in the NHL is held by Punch Broadbent of the Ottawa Senators.
Of course.
Naturally.
1920-22. It's
Another
16 games.
bar bet.
16 games.
I'm not leaving.
Punch Broadbent.
And Gretzky's longest streak was only 9 games.
What a hack.
Yeah.
Okay.
Quick hit.
quick hit. Well, too late.
Quick sort of
hit.
quick hit.
Jeez. Speaking of
1994, April 4th. At Wrigley Field, Cubs outfielder Carl Tuffy Rhodes became the first National League player to hit 3 home runs in a game on opening day. And he hit all 3 of them off of Dwight Gooden.
Wow.
He hit just 5 more home runs the entire rest of that season, and he hit just 13 in his entire Major League career. However, he did go on to play in Japan, and he hit 454 career home runs in Japan. And in 2001, he tied the legendary Sadaharu O's record of 55 in a single season. And for his last few games in that season, the Japanese pitchers refused to pitch to him because he had tied O's record. Oh. And they just walked him every time because they did not want him breaking Sadaharu O's record. The record has since been broken, but still, he came back in 2006 to try out for the Reds, didn't make the team, went back to Japan and hit 40 home runs and 119 RBIs for the Oryx Buffaloes in 2008 at age 39. Carl Tuffy Rhodes.
Well,
Quick hit.
quick hit. You mentioned Dwight Gooden, which takes us back to the 1988 Mets. And April 4th, 1988, the Mets set an MLB opening day record by hitting 6 home runs in a 10-6 win over the Expos in Montreal. Or if you're American, Montreal. Mm-hmm. Dale Strawberry and Kevin McReynolds each hit 2, and Kevin Elster and Lenny Dykstra each had 1. So 6 homers opening day. And that 1988 Mets team was a very good team, especially with Gooden pitching, Darling pitching, Cone pitching. The pen had Randy Myers, Roger McDowell. But they ran into that Dodgers team in the pennant, and in that Game 7, Ron Darling got rocked early, and Earl Hershiser took a complete game.
A lot of those guys on that Mets from that were on both teams said they think the 88 team was better than the 86 team.
I definitely think they had a better pitching staff.
Yeah.
They're both good pitching staffs. I
But
think
they
they're
just
better.
didn't,
Just
it's
that.
all a matter of when you're hot and all that.
You're that hot, exactly right. And Strawberry had a fantastic season that year in '88.
Imagine that Mets team going to Montreal, how much they must have misbehaved in the 80s. Like, can you imagine that? Like, the fact that they hit all those home runs in that game, like what they must have gotten up to the night before with Lenny Dykstra and Dwight, like all those
Just
guys
bad
on that team.
news.
Like, just trouble. They probably came right from the Gentlemen's Club into the stadium, and you know what I mean? Like,
For more on that, read the book. Read the book. The Bad Guys,
Bad Guys
Won.
Won, yeah.
The Bad Guys Won is a legendary book about these wonderful human beings,
Yeah.
the
Yes.
80s Mets.
yeah.
Yeah.
2004, the Panthers and the Hurricanes finished the NHL game, tied 6-6 in a game in Miami. So this ended up being the last tie game in NHL history. The 2004-05 season, of course, was canceled, and when the league returned in 05-06, the shootout was adopted, eliminating tie games forever. I have a secondary hit on this, in that Carolina defenseman Brad Fast, he is the one who scored that final game-tying goal in the NHL. Not only was it Fast's first goal in the NHL, it was his last goal, and the only NHL goal he ever, or the only NHL game he ever played.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
That was it for him.
That was it.
Scored a goal, played a game.
And if you're a fan of the show, we've had NHL players on
Yep.
who were only in one game.
That's right.
I mean, he didn't quit hockey. He played more in the minors in Europe, but
Sure.
that was his only NHL
Wow.
game, and he scored the last tying, the goal for the last tie game in the
goal
NHL.
Yeah, I guess I figured that we remember something. I'm out of here.
Not bad.
Yeah,
1978, New Jersey Nets forward John Williamson, who I've literally never heard of, scored 50 points in a game versus the Pacers in Indianapolis. Now, Williamson was never an all-star. I've never heard of him, but he had 10 games with at least 40 points between 1977 and 79. Now, it just made me think of some other random players who've scored 50 in a game. Terrence Ross, who had 51 for the Raptors in 2014. He's never had more than 35 in any other game. Corey Brewer had 51 for the Nuggets in 2014. He averaged, his best season, he averaged 13 a game. Mo Williams had 52 for Minnesota. Kevin Porter Jr. had 50 in just his third NBA season. Sadiq Bey. There's a lot of guys who had 50. Tracy Murray had 50 for Washington. He only started 80 NBA games in his career, and he had a 50-point game.
And I remember that.
Yeah.
I don't know why I remember that happening, but it was a shocker.
I remember the Terrence Ross one for the Raptors.
Yeah.
That was pretty bananas.
Yeah.
Anyway, there's a few guys who've done that not household names.
Well, they weren't being double teamed, probably, and then eventually got to go. Well, let's slide somebody over there to cover him as well.
It's pretty amazing. Fred Brown had 58 for Seattle, and there was no 3-point line then.
Oh yeah, true.
And he averaged less than 15 for his whole career. So I don't know what he was doing on that night in Seattle, but Fred Brown went crazy.
Yeah,
58.
Do you think some of those they're just feeding the guy? They're like, you're
Sure,
having a
he's
career
hot.
night.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
gonna, but
No
we're
one's
gonna try
covering
and
him.
Yeah.
This guy doesn't score. Let's
And
not
he's-
cover him.
And he's feeling it.
At point 40, you decide we better slide a guy over to double team this guy.
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, maybe.
Let's talk hockey. 1990, April 4th, 1990. Despite losing the game 7-5 to Winnipeg, and the Oilers certainly owned those Jets. They unfortunately, though, they did lose that night to Winnipeg. Mark Messier set an NHL record by scoring his 11th career shorthanded playoff goal, breaking former teammate Wayne Gretzky's record. He retired with 14 playoff shorthanded goals. That is still a record in the playoffs. That's one that Messier has that Gretzky does not have.
Yeah.
That's why the one they still talk about. I'm sure
sure.
to this day, he still has that record.
2021. So very recently, Jacob Chychrun of Arizona became the third defenseman in NHL history to score all three of his team's goals in a game when he scored the overtime winner in a 3-2 Coyotes win over the Ducks. That's all I got to say.
All right.
I mean,
We have to mention this. 1974, Henry Aaron tied Babe Ruth's career record by hitting his 714th career home run at Cincinnati's Riverfront Stadium versus Reds pitcher Jack Billingham. It was on a 3-1 pitch, and it was Aaron's first swing of that season, which is kind of hilarious that he finished the last season with 713. Like, imagine going those last few games of the season thinking, he's going to do it. And then he didn't. You know, we got to wait till April now. Interestingly, we talked about him previously, largest opening day crowd in the stadium's history in Cincinnati, but Bowie Kuhn not in attendance. In an interesting little note, he was not there when he broke the record either. Bowie Kuhn was in Cleveland attending opening day there, and it was snowed out. So I find that Hank Aaron mentions that in his book.
That's a weird choice.
He's very aware that Bowie Kuhn, the commissioner of baseball, was not present when he broke those records. And it's a bit of a blemish on Bowie's record, I got to say.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, what are you doing?
Yeah, why?
Why? Like, what could you possibly
Snowed
be
out
seeing
game
in
in
Cleveland?
Cleveland.
Yeah, no.
Well, you know, I'm gonna jump into birthdays. Sound okay,
yeah,
guys?
yeah.
1963, Hall of Fame hockey legend Dale Hawerchuk, born in Toronto. Ducky, we love him because he was a Jet. Died way too young, and he of course was nicknamed Ducky because in the juniors, one of his coaches or players said he skates like a duck. So that stuck with him his entire career. Ducky.
1974, former Falcons tight end who popularized the Dirty Bird dance, O.J. Santiago, was born in Whitby, Ontario, Canadian. Many credit Jamal Anderson is the originator of the Dirty Bird.
Not Matt Kippen, though.
No, not me, the Dirty Bird. But OJ really took it to a new level. He loved doing that. So 1974?
1983, former NBA player Ben Gordon was born in London, England. Here's a little bit of trivia about Ben Gordon. He's the only player to win the Sixth Man of the Year in his rookie season. And he won a national title with UConn in 2004, and he shares the NBA record for the most three-pointers in a game without a miss. He made 9, and he did it twice.
Here's a birth, 1979. A longtime NHL goalie, notorious grump, Roberto Luongo, born in Montreal, Quebec. I remember well that whenever they would go to him in the crowd at the NHL awards, he was never smiling. He was the guy you just never wanted to go to on the camera because
his hair was really slicked back.
His hair, as they said in Werewolves of London, was perfect.
The wet look.
The wet look.
In 1938, former MLB commissioner Bart Giamatti was born in Boston, Massachusetts. Of course, he is the father of Paul Giamatti.
Thank you.
Yes, sir.
And I do you have one more, Mike? Do you want one more?
No, I just want to make sure, SJB, you've got in 2008. You've got a one that I previewed it in the
We
teaser.
better get to it.
In 2008, the movie.
Oh yes, please take it.
No,
please take it.
All right. I haven't rehearsed. In 2008, this is so not going to be worth it now. Leatherheads, a movie starring and directed by George Clooney about a fictional football team in the 1920s, was released. It also starred Renee Zellweger, John Krasinski, and Jonathan Pryce. And it was co-written by Sports Illustrated columnist Rick Riley. It did not do well at the box office. And interestingly enough, this is a little bit of trivia for Office fans. John Krasinski had to shave his head to be in the film, and for the last 6 episodes of season 3 of The Office, John Krasinski is wearing a wig. Jim's famous sort of haircut. He had a wig made for him that is really good. Like, nobody could tell, including the show's producers, but it is in fact a wig because he had to shave his head for the movie.
Wow.
And I had teased that early.
You have to pay it off.
I don't want to leave people hanging. You know what I mean?
I
think it was worth it to go back.
And we don't want to keep people hanging on the 1999 death of Early Wynn. He was, of course, a Hall of Fame pitcher, 300 career wins, original radio color man for the Toronto Blue Jays. Was Early Wynn. He was did color for the Blue Jays from 77 and 81. Early Wynn is such a fantastic baseball name. It's like the opposite of Bob Walk.
Yeah.
You had Bob Walk, you got Early Wynn, these great names, Dick Pole. Early Wynn, fantastic name.
That's a draft.
Yeah,
Great
there we go.
names.
Great baseball names, definitely. And Bake McBride.
Homer Bush.
Thank you. But of course, Early Wynn was a big part of the 54 Indians, who of course were swept by the Mays and his Giants. But that pitching staff was Bob Lemon. You had Feller on that staff, and you had Early Wynn. Those 3 alone. But then they also had Garcia, who was the ERA champ. So they had 4 great pitchers. Great season, won a ton of games, and were swept by those Giants in 54.
That's the year of the catch, too, right?
The year of the catch,
World
that's
Series,
it.
Yeah.
Yep, off of Vic Wirtz.
That's right.
Yep.
Do we have any more we want to do, or do we want to get to the draft?
Well, I wanted to segue the draft somehow.
Okay.
I talked about some baseball at the end. I know it was a depth, and we had some other stuff there. Just because I talked about 1954 because I just want to forget how great that Indians pitching staff was. Let's get into some fantasy baseball because it is kind of the time now. We're in April.
Season's gonna start.
I mean, we did talk about Herb Washington earlier,
Yeah.
who was just a base stealing specialist.
And someone named Hank Aaron who hit a few home runs.
There you go. So we got some baseball out there, but you're right. Someone like Herb, you might draft him in a rotisserie league because you think, well, I'll get some stolen bases out of this, and that's about it. Well, let's talk about some forgotten stars from fantasy baseball's past. And let's draft. Let's talk about some of those people. So, Matt, you seem like you want to tell some parameters on how we're going to.
No, I was waiting to hear them from you, but let's work them out together. I think these are players who had, not a prolonged fantasy stardom. They might have had a good season or two.
Maybe 1 or 2, yeah.
Yeah,
sure.
And you're like, oh, yeah, that person was.
And it's we're doing this since 1990, right?
Yeah.
Since
Yes.
fantasy baseball really became a popular thing.
Yeah.
1 or 2 good seasons, and we're gonna take 4 players each. Is that right?
Yeah, and you can't take the same position twice.
And you got to have 4 different positions.
4 different positions. I know the parameters of they had 2, 3, whatever, a few good seasons. I kind of stretched from that.
Okay,
but
it could also be it could be like you had.
But I can go back. I can.
It could be one good season, one good game.
Do we reserve the right to say that's invalid?
You can make fun of me all you like, but you can't say it's invalid.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
Because
I'm going to take Ricky Henderson.
You
as
took
my
2
first...
right wingers in a draft when we were listening to it. So it may happen that way. I took Pete Peters, as we know. It didn't qualify. It does happen. You can mock me all you like. Who'd you say? Ricky Henderson? You said? Yeah.
But the draft
then
is,
my parameters are my own, so I'm taking.
Okay.
The draft
Tony
is
Gwynn.
fantasy. Yeah, forgotten fantasy stars or fantasy baseball.
Yeah. Guys that may have gotten picked only once or twice.
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Sure.
And you probably regretted it at least one of those times.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can play by any rules, guys.
Yeah.
Do you want to tell us what your parameters were?
I can win from anywhere. What?
Yeah. What were your parameters?
Just kind of went like, oh yeah, you forget how good that guy was for quite some time, and then maybe you don't think about him anymore.
Oh.
That's not at all
That's
what
just
I did.
like, hey, remember this guy?
No. I can adjust.
Yeah. Okay.
I have lots of options. What's the order here, Matt?
First?
I think I go last in the. Oh no, I went last in the last one, didn't I?
I don't know.
Who knows?
Who went first last time?
Who knows? Did you? You went first last time?
Yeah.
Okay, we'll say that. It doesn't really matter.
Sandy will let you go first because you
Thank
seem
you.
the least prepared.
Yeah. We'll hang you out to dry.
Well, okay then. Okay, I'm gonna pick somebody that you'd be like, yeah, I would definitely move this guy up in the draft because of scarcity at a position and was good for a bunch of years. Maybe you forget how good Rafael Furcal was, and I'm gonna pick him because you may forget how good he was for like a good stretch of time, and then he got hurt, and then it was kind of over. So I'm gonna take him. That's when I'm gonna take my shortstop.
Like Sandy's in a
Yeah,
different
I think
draft
Sandy's
from us.
playing the wrong draft.
Okay, that's all right.
On my way.
My notes do not have anybody as good as Rafael Furcal.
Yeah, he was a superstar
Yeah,
for
he
a while.
played for a long time.
I don't know. You can play for a long time, but not. be
Sandy
great
seems
for
to
it.
feel that people forgot about him.
Yeah.
I think people did.
Clearly, Matt and I
I
did
think
not.
they did.
And-
I think they did. I think the average person forgot about him. Furcal is my number 1 pick.
Okay.
All right, Kip and
Mike,
go ahead.
no, you go.
All right,
You
all right,
go.
well,
I mean, I'll go
scared
if you
now.
want me to.
go ahead. Yeah, it's fine.
All right, I'm gonna take a first baseman. I am gonna take Bob Hamlin.
Yeah,
So he won Rookie of the Year in 1994 over Manny Ramirez.
that's correct.
He hit 282 with 24 home runs and 65 RBI. He even stole 4 bases. He had a decent season in 97 with Detroit, but he never lived up to that fantasy promise, from that year.
And he was out of baseball by 98.
Yeah. So, Sandy, that's a
Yeah, that's more what we're doing. Like that was.
You guys are in a different draft than me.
Yeah, that's
Oh, well,
right.
if I can win this way, that's the way I'm going to win.
That's the way you're going to win. Okay.
big superstars.
I will go next.
I don't think, hold on, Furcal's not a superstar. That's a little much. You're making it sound like I was like, you know what, A-Rod, why not?
Yeah, I think.
Let's bring up Furcal and have
Yeah,
a look
okay,
at him.
that's right.
Was he ever in like
I think
you might be right. You might be right.
No,
I may be wrong. I don't. It's 2 guys against 1. It's okay.
Yeah, no, it's fine. And
Yeah.
there's no. He was a 3-time All-Star. He won Rookie of the Year. I don't think he's a forgotten guy. All right, it doesn't matter. All right, I'm going to take a third baseman. I'm going to take 1999 Fernando Tatis Sr. That year for St. Louis, he had 34 home runs and 21 stolen bases. So that's a real fantasy bonus. He batted .298, and he was only 24 years old. But he never again hit more than 18 in a season, and he never stole more than 4 again in another season.
Wow. That's good, dumb.
That was the year he hit behind Mark McGuire, who hit 65 that year. So he may have been seeing some fastballs with McGuire standing on first base, having been walked. But nevertheless, he had 1 great season, and that was it. So he's going to be my third baseman as Matt and I continue this draft.
Yeah, you guys have a great time. You guys are going to get
Sandy
smoked.
has his own.
Well, this is like guys who never watched the game.
Sandy will now pick Barry Bonds, who he thinks people have also forgotten about.
All right, you guys are being dicks, so I'm going to go to a pitcher I think maybe people forgot about. Chuck Finley. And I'm going with Chuck Finley.
We clearly have to get these inter-office memos clearer. Chuck Finley won over 200 Major League games.
Yeah, people forgot about him.
Forgotten.
You forget about how good he was.
He's not a one-season wonder remotely.
You didn't say one-season wonders.
Yeah, we did.
No, but you should have said one-season wonders.
Matt literally said that as we started.
You should have said one-season wonders. That would have been great.
How is it that Matt and I both understand that clearly?
Nope, you have to say one-season
Chuck
wonders.
Finley
I said
was a
forgotten fantasy guys.
5-time All-Star.
Yep, sounds
and
good.
he had 200 career wins.
Yeah, I think
And
we
you're
were going
saying
for
that-
like these guys had like 1 or 2 good seasons,
Yeah.
and then they kind of dropped
Yeah.
off a bit.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
you know what? Maybe we weren't clear, and communication
Nope.
is a two-way street. So
Nope.
we got to put that on us too, Sandy.
Well,
Thank you.
Yeah, okay.
Well, okay, that's fine.
Okay.
My favorite thing about so what's the what guy who married Whitesnake? Does it Tawny Katan? What was her name? What was that?
Yeah, that's who it was.
Chuck Finley was
Yeah, it
married
was,
to her.
yeah.
Chuck Finley was married to her, of course, and they had a very ugly divorce.
Yes, they did.
But she has passed away since, so we're not going to talk about that.
Okay.
Great. I'm glad you didn't bring that up.
This one's a little. I'm going to pick one that's a little closer to Sandy. Maybe this will
Good,
get.
take some pressure
I'm
off
going
of
to take
me.
an outfielder who
He's
was.
taking Nolan Ryan.
He wasn't bad. He was a solid contributor all the time. But in 1996, Brady Anderson hit 50 home runs out of nowhere.
Yep.
And he has never had more than 24 before or since. So for my outfield, I'm taking Brady Anderson.
Other than the guy who
See, I
gave
was
him
way
a-
too strict about this because
Do you think even he was?
Yeah, I do.
one-year wonders would have been a great thing to say to me a long time ago.
Matt and I seem to have understood it pretty clearly. Brady Anderson hit 210 career home runs.
Yeah, but he had
50,
like,
And he also stole 315 bases, so he would have been chosen lots of times.
yeah, but what I'm saying is that 1 year he was a superstar. Like he hit 50 home runs out of nowhere, and next year in the fantasy he was probably like put way, you know what I mean, in the first round, and everybody grabbed him, and then it's like, whoa, what happened there? So
Yeah, no doubt.
I do acknowledge he was a solid contributor, but he was a superstar.
He sure did. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. Okay. I'm going to take.
Oh boy,
Sandy, you just concentrate on taking Jose Canseco. I'm going to take. I'm going to take a catcher. I'm going to take 19. We're doing 3 different drafts here. I'm going to do 1993 Rick Wilkins for the Cubs.
Okay.
In 1993, Rick Wilkins hit 30 home runs, which not many catchers do. He batted .303, had a .561 slugging percentage. In his other 10 years in the major leagues, he hit a total of 51, and he never had more than 14 in any other season. But that 1 year with the Cubs, for some reason, I think he liked playing day games. Rick Wilkins, catcher, that's my number 2 pick.
Nice.
that's a great pick, and I better just play by the rules at least in one round. I've got it down to a couple guys that I don't think I'm going to get made fun of for, which is great. I'm going to go with, you know what? You said a catcher? Jonathan Lucroy.
Yep.
I'm going to go Jonathan Lucroy. There was a guy who every year you're just like, well, he had one amazing season.
He did.
But again, then you're looking at fantasy, like you forget, like catcher it's always such a dry pick. So, no one laughed at that one. So at least I get one in that follows the qualifications. And I'm not going to go with Barry Bonds. I am going to go with John Lucroy.
As he crosses Bonds off of his sheet.
Oh, man.
All right, Kip, and who's your next fantasy?
Well, you know what? I wasn't sure if I was going to take this guy or not, but since this way we'll all have a catcher. So I'm going to take a catcher. And the one I'm going to take
Mike
is
Piazza.
I'm going to take
Johnny Bench.
Do you guys remember, this may be more, do you remember Willen Rosario
Oh, yeah.
for the Rockies?
Yep.
So he finished 4th in Rookie of the Year voting in 2012 with 28 homers and 270, 4 steals. He had a decent follow-up year. Regressed more in 2014, and in 2015 they got Hundley, and Rosario just played at first base some and emergency catching, and then after 2015 he went on to play in Korea, Japan, Mexico, and China. But I thought that he was going to be one of the next great catchers.
It goes to show you the effect Colorado has on hitting, eh?
So that was my pick, Willen Rosario at catcher.
All
Nice.
righty.
Mike, close this out. Close
No,
this
we
out.
got one more round to go still,
Yeah,
Sandy.
yeah,
Oh
we do.
my
We do.
God.
It's a
You
4-round.
can still
Close this out.
You can still pick McGuire.
Bernie Williams.
I'm going to take a shortstop.
Derek Jeter.
Alex Rodriguez. I'm going to take 1992 Pat Listash.
Yeah.
You might remember one Rookie of the Year in the American League that year. The Brewers gave the Jays a real run right to the end there, and Pat Listash stole 54 bases in his rookie season and scored 93 runs. He batted .290, He was terrific, and he was only 24. But the next year, he stole only 18, and he never had more than 360 at-bats again in a season the rest of his career.
Injury prone,
and he was out of MLB by 1999. So he's my next flash in the pan pick.
Flash in the pan. See, now here's the problem. Now you're using terms like flash in the pan. Like, that's not at all what you guys told me. You guys did not.
It really is. It's just not what you heard.
I never
Clearly,
heard.
Kippen and I are playing
we kind
the
of
same.
understood this. Yeah, Mike and I kind
You're
of.
picking guys who should be in the Hall of Fame.
I see.
I think what you're doing saying is like, oh, remember that guy? Yeah, he was great in fantasy in the 90s. Just names of good players, which is a fun game too.
Thank you.
But
Yeah, that was
But
fun.
also wrong. All right, Sandy, who's your next?
These are all stars. I got nothing. The problem. Yeah, I got problems here.
All right, well, just pick a star. You're going for it now anyway. It's not going to matter.
you know who I think would win for you? Oh no, keep going. Pick your own team. Yeah.
Pick my own team.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I was going to help you out, but I was like, what? That's
All right. You know what? I don't know if this is going to work out or not, or I'm going to get made fun of, but I'm going to say Darren Erstad.
Just resentful silence.
Because he's about as low down the list as I got with all these stars on here. Darren Erstad,
Yeah.
what a guy.
yeah.
Oh man.
Frank, can we redo this?
Can we do the flash in the pan draft no one told me about? Great. Next week, flash in the pan.
I wasn't expecting to have so many of these guys still available.
That's what happens.
Okay, I feel like I need to get a pitcher, and there are a couple. How about?
Roy Halladay.
Yeah.
Well, just for fun, let's go. No, that was just one. Let's go Dontrell Willis. So in 2003, he was Rookie of the Year. And then in 2005, he was second in Cy Young voting. So he had a couple good seasons. He was an all-star both those years, but he never really regained that top form. Like, he just had those 2 seasons, really. So that's my pick is
Okay.
Dontrell Willis.
Yeah.
You know, it's not one season, but he certainly played a long time and only had that.
Yeah,
no, he was a
that's
star. Like, he was a superstar, really, for 1 year.
That wind-up, right? Okay, I'm going to take a picture, too. And my picture is 1997 for the San Francisco Giants, Sean Estes,
Yep.
who you may recall went 19-5 at age 24. He had 201 innings pitched, despite leading the league in walks. He had 100 walks that year, and he was an all-star. He pitched 11 more MLB seasons, but he never got within a run of that ERA again, except for one other year. And he only threw 200 innings twice more. He was never an all-star again. But in 1997, he had one glorious season. And I'm sure, and I remember that in 1998, everybody was picking Sean Estes, thinking he was going to be the next, ace of baseball, and that didn't really work out.
Yeah.
So there you go. Sean Estes is my pitcher.
He's
He's no Chuck Finley.
Does this wrap our broken draft?
For the love of
It
God,
does.
yes, it does.
Can I just say the one that I thought you might have picked, Sandy, was your boy Shelby Miller.
Shelby Miller. Yeah, that's
You
a good
love
one.
drafting that guy.
Shelby Miller,
He
sure.
finished third in voting for Rookie of the Year in 2013.
Yeah.
And was an all-star.
mean,
he was an all-star in 2017, but even though he was 6 and 17.
We don't want to keep mentioning too many people that didn't get
Oh,
picked,
right,
right? Because we
right.
want our guests.
Well, I mean, I'm going to get roasted because I'm on a different plane, or just completely win when it's
Yeah,
like,
that's true.
what I think is a forgotten star.
yeah, we're going to make it very difficult for our guests to adjudicate this, like 2 different sets of criteria.
Okay. Well, let's. I'm looking at guys I probably should have been more in the parameters, but there's not many. I completely didn't know the rules of this thing. But maybe it leads to victory.
Yeah,
you
it could well.
Yeah. Okay. Let's go get judged.
All right. Well, we have we've done our draft. We have our judge. We will get into some of the things that we changed up since the draft, but I think I'm just going to introduce our guest first because that's the most important part. After a decade in local radio covering news and sports, Steve Gardner has been a sports writer, columnist, and editor at USA Today since 1993.
Wow.
Along the way, he's covered 19 World Series, 6 MLB All-Star games, 1 Super Bowl, and many other sporting events. Since 2006, Steve has written a fantasy baseball column for USA Today Sports Weekly, and since 2012 has been USA Today's senior fantasy editor. He has 18 National Fantasy Expert League titles to his credit. Wow. And in 2021, he was named to the Fantasy Sports Writers Association Hall of Fame. Please welcome Steve Gardner. Steve, hello.
Hey, Sandy. Thank you. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Appreciate you welcoming me on your show.
Well, absolutely. You are overqualified. But
I was just going to say.
you still get the job. But we are big fans of yours. Of course, we're all fantasy baseball freaks as well. And for many years, even back to the days when Matt was in the pool where I was commissioner back in Winnipeg, where I had to get USA Today, get the USA Today, get the Baseball Weekly, get the stats out and by hand, like pumping all the stats. So going back to those days, and we were in Winnipeg and you went to 7-Eleven, like Baseball Weekly was like, and USA Today and all that kind of stuff was just like, wow, we actually got one in Canada. This is amazing. This is like gold for us.
And they can sell out at the 7-Eleven. You couldn't wait till the last minute to get your fans to fill out.
You had to do it.
It's that way now too, only it's just because they don't print as many of the copies anymore.
Right.
So the distribution is pretty poor.
Yeah.
There was just such great snide comments in there. We loved it. Steve, so thanks for doing this. So we had a draft, of course, and we wanted to get these players that were, as was understood by two guys, they flash in the pan kind of players who were good for 2 or 3 years, and then we didn't hear from them again, or you went out, you overbid, or you picked a guy really early based on what he did before, and he's gone forever and tanks forever. My draft was totally different than that, so I decided to resubmit to Steve the actual guys that would fit that criteria. So now we're all on the same page of these 3 flash in the pan type of guys. So, Steve, in your first steps of looking at these 3 teams, what are some initial thoughts you had?
Well, yes, I can remember some of these seasons that these players have had, and the excitement that we had for just a 300 hitting catcher with 30 home runs.
Oh,
I mean, whoa, that's huge. I mean, this guy, and it was like his 3rd major league season.
Yeah.
Great things are in store for this fella, and I remember those types of seasons and getting so excited and getting let down as well.
Almost immediately, as I recall. Yeah.
And it's, I write, one of my columns every year talks about what we give the Tuffy Awards to for Tuffy Rhodes, who had 3 home runs on opening day in like 1994, something like that, off Dwight Gooden, and basically flamed out the rest of the year and went on to have a great career in Japan. But those types of players, you're right in my wheelhouse with this.
I like to pick 2 or 3 of those guys every year.
Yeah, it happens to me too.
And it's interesting because if you're talking about that era, you often were in pools that were not mixed leagues. That was always a big thing. You had national or American, and you had 2 catchers. You were often asked to get 2 catchers, and that second catcher was always just whoever's left at the end of the day.
Yeah.
And you were super excited if you got Dave Valley and he got you anything or whatever it was. And when BJ Surhoff was stealing a few bases, you were like, I got to get Surhoff. That's another category for a catcher stealing bases. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Jason Kendall, another one of those guys.
Yeah.
Loved him.
Yeah.
Sure.
Kendall was definitely on that list. And it was so shocking. And it's shocking today that Real Muto can steal bases, because that is just catcher stealing bases is just completely unheard of. It's completely insane. So you can see how people got overly excited about certain guys.
Yeah.
Who else is out there that you see, Steve, that you were seeing those lists and kind of going, I remember this guy, and I remember how either heartbreaking or what the heck happened to this guy?
Well, another John Jaha was another name that I was like, I just love his name too.
Yeah.
And to be able to, oh yes, I remember John Jaha. He was, he had a big year with Milwaukee, and then a couple of years after that, he just injuries and then resurfaced in Oakland. So that was a fun memory for me to see him. And
also nice to see an Australian succeed too, right?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And wasn't there something about him living his best life these days to where he retired and like he's on a boat somewhere in the islands, and it's just like, well done, dude.
Yeah,
well done.
So
I'm just looking up John Jaha, looking for pictures of him on a yacht. We'll see if we can find that out.
Sandy, is there one team that the listeners won't be aware of? Is what you're saying? So they've heard us draft 2 teams.
Oh, good point. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
That's
Why
right.
don't you just review without saying whose team is
So-
whose?
So I would say, okay, first of all, I was just going to say the fact John Jaha is not the Australian looking for. I think you're thinking of Dave Nielsen from.
Oh, I am. Yeah, pardon me. You're right.
from
I
those
got my Brewers catchers confused.
mid 90s Brewers. Jaha at first, Nielsen, a wonky catcher, but Nielsen, of course, coaching in the World Baseball Classic for us.
Yeah, that's what I got. That's right.
Yes, thank you for that indication, Mike. Sorry, Matt. I'm going to just update everybody at home, in the studio audience, as they might say. John Jaha this is my reselected team: John Jaha, Chase Headley, Phil Plantier, and Jason Marquis. That was my 4. So I got a pitcher in there. I got Plantier, Headley, and Jaha. That's why Jaha came up. Yeah, Jaha in the mid 90s kind of says to me Brewers. Like that was like that mid 90s Brewers team that had like Pat Listash and John Jaha. And as you said, Dave Nielsen was there, and that was like Vigna at second and Valentin at short. I could go on. Gerald Williams was even on. The late great Gerald Williams was even, I think, on that team.
A lot of guys you almost immediately regretted drafting in your fantasy pool.
Thank you. Yes.
In time. A lot of Brewers fit that bill.
And just a great opportunity to see Mike Fetters come into a game and then hit a home run. So okay, that's a great one. So Jaha, of course, but we should just have a Jaha category. I mean, you had your Tuffy awards, maybe we should have the Jaha awards.
There you go.
Who else
I
you
like
see there, Steve? How about any pitchers? Any pitchers?
Yeah, well, Jason Marquis, I got to see him a little bit here in Washington. I got my Nationals old school shirt on. But yeah, Jason Marquis it's like the typical last pitcher on your roster. He's really bad, but he'll give you innings kind of thing. And just for some reason, out of nowhere, he comes and has a great year in Colorado in, pitching there of any, of all places in 2009. He wins 15 games. But he struck out nobody. I mean, that's one of the things in looking at these stats and the pitchers from even, 20 years ago or less, how few of them really were big strikeout pitchers, and that's been a fantasy category since I guess when people moved to 5x5 leagues from 4x4 leagues and they added strikeouts, that was, a big thing. And so many pitchers, even great pitchers, in playing, simulation leagues, Sandy, as we know, Jim Palmer didn't strike out that many batters, but he was great. How did they do that back then? They got the batters to hit their pitches and put the ball in play weekly, and defenders were a lot better to some degree at some positions.
I think maybe the hitters' approaches were a bit different, are different now too. There's so much more like 3 true outcomes.
Right.
Guys are swinging, they don't mind that they strike out like they did maybe 25 years ago too, right? Like it's not as shameful. Guys are striking out 200 times a year. They don't even care. They're
right. And that used to be, the worst badge of dishonor to have that many strikeouts. Another Brewer, Jose Hernandez.
Oh yeah.
Remember? Wasn't he the guy that got benched like for the last couple of games because he was on 198 or 199 strikeouts?
Yeah.
So that was huge. You didn't want to strike out that many times.
Yeah. I feel like Adam Dunn broke the glass ceiling on that. Like he just kind of was like, I don't care. I'm going to hit 40 bombs and strike out 900 times.
Another Washington national legend right there. The big donkey.
Yeah, I remember my favorite Adam Dunn memory is when USA played Canada at the Sky Dome, and Canada was doing pretty well. And then Adam Dunn hit a ball that looked like it was going to probably blow through the wall and hit off the CN Tower. And the whole crowd was like, ah! Like all the energy went out of the room.
I was at that game too. Yeah, that was.
He's massive. Adam Dunn was huge. I was like, this guy's going to absolutely crush. Like you say, absolutely crush or absolutely miss it and not care.
Yeah, and he walked a lot too, and that's what made him such an effective real baseball player.
Yeah.
Right, we're into this is fantasy baseball, friends. It kind of reflects real life. We talked about mid 90s Brewers. Pat Listash is on this list. One of these lists, he makes that list. He had a lot of speed. I remember that. He's a fast guy, but he couldn't stay healthy, it seemed. I guess that's what killed him.
54 bases in 92.
Yeah, rookie of the year.
Yeah.
Yep, that rookie of the year was where his career peaked.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is
Yeah.
true.
And we thought, oh wow, we got a real spark plug here, real pepper pot.
Oh yeah.
The announcers say, and that was about it for Pat Listash.
Yeah, that didn't work out. No.
Funny thing about Listash is he played with Milwaukee when they were in the American League and Houston when they were in the National League.
That's an interesting stat. Okay.
Yeah.
Useful to some.
Take it or leave it.
That's why people tune into this program.
Exactly.
Yeah, that kind
For
of
nuggets like that.
Now,
that
Steve,
kind of infotainment.
well, Steve, here you go. You talked about a guy who peaked as a rookie. Bob Hamlin is on a list as well. There's an example.
Well, that was the 94 strike season, so it was shortened. So the numbers, if you look at that and you go back and say, oh, well, he only hit 24 home runs and drove in 65 runs, that's your rookie of the year. Well, they didn't finish the season. They missed like the last 2 months of it or something like that. So and the funny part about Bob Hamlin is, you remember he won that award. The guy that finished second was Manny Ramirez, who turned out to have a pretty decent career himself.
He did okay.
So yes, one of those. I can't say necessarily that the voters got it wrong, but history certainly did not look kindly on Bob Hamlin's career.
Yeah, and the people that drafted him after that year in their fantasy leagues were sorely disappointed. Now, hey, we also know, Steve, you're a big Orioles guy as well. And Brady Anderson's on a list here. He was kind of a questionable pick. I was the most questionable with my whole team before I made a new team.
My Chuck Thompson announcer talking bobblehead doll. Yeah. I don't. It's old. Let me see. Yeah.
I think Chuck died.
Well, this is, guys, when you get into the Fantasy Sports Writers Association Hall of Fame, they give you that bobblehead.
Yeah.
I know, it's my most treasured possession, I must say.
But Brady Anderson, it was kind of questionable because he did have good seasons. I guess he just had that one monster season, which was, how did he get those 50 home runs or whatever? But
well, there's a lot of speculation that's not really a stretch, I guess we could say, with Brady Anderson. But the thing with him, he was a speedy guy, and that was what his value was: a leadoff hitter and a stolen base guy. Had 53 stolen bases, in 92 when he made his first All-Star team. So that was the kind of player that we thought he was until his huge career year in 96, where he hit 50 home runs and scored 117, drove in 110. That just completely came out of nowhere. Never hit more than 24 home runs in a season before or since that year. And it was a marvel of science and whatever else.
Thank you. Thank you. It was a cocktail of something that was injected somewhere.
I think after he did that in fantasy, a lot of people were taking him very high the next year, like in the first round, and I think that's maybe what the person who picked him, I forget who it was thinking about that, just going, he skyrocketed up and became a fantasy superstar and maybe was never quite a superstar again.
No.
Well, and you get somebody that's playing every day and hits that many home runs and steals bases as well. That's, you look at those qualities, that's a number one overall kind of pick, dude, if you knew it beforehand.
Yeah.
I was just thinking too, how many guys in the history of baseball have ever had 50 home run and 50 stolen base seasons? Like, I don't know if there's anybody else.
Well, how many stolen bases was the highest that Willie Mays got? It wouldn't have been 50.
I think he might have gotten 50 early.
Okay, because I know in 60 or 61, 62, was it that he had 50 something home runs? Is that right?
And I'm sure Barry Bonds in his early career had.
Did he steal 50?
Oh yeah, there you go.
I'm pretty sure he did.
Okay. But it's pretty rare company though,
52 for Bonds in 1990, his first MVP season.
Right.
And in 65 is when Mays hit 52 home runs, but he did not ever have a 50 stolen base. He had 40.
40 is his most.
Yeah, he had 49 homers and 52.
So like you're talking about maybe 2 or 3 people ever that have done that. It's pretty. That tells you how well science was working for Barry.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Brady that year.
Barry, Brady, John Jaha, 50-50.
And Rick Wilkins.
I'm so intrigued to go back, by the way, and look up John Jaha's Wonderful Life right now, because it sounds like he's on an episode of Below Deck the way you just described it.
Yeah, I think it was him that just a couple of weeks ago there was like an Instagram video or something along those lines, and that was out on Twitter as well. And he was out on a boat and he was diving in the water and living his best life.
That is absolutely perfect. I'm excited to see that. And if anyone out there, speaking of Below Deck, has ever seen the Johnny Damon and his wife episode of Below Deck, you know what it's a shit show. Let's just say it. And if you may not want to see it, it is an absolute disaster. But like some Norwegian guy gets on the boat and starts like hitting on Johnny Damon's wife, and she loses her mind, and Johnny loses his mind, and it's listen, it's theatrics on TV like no other. So we'll break down the best reality show appearances by baseball players at some point on this show for sure. Johnny Damon will be on there. Well, I brought this conversation to a halt with that. So
I don't know how to help you
Below
from there.
Deck. We've sunk to new depths. Huh?
Hey,
none of us knew how to help you dig out of that.
How about this though? Okay, I'll bring it back. This guy was the coolest guy in baseball, flash in the pan for sure. Dontrelle Willis on this list here, and Steve. I mean, that was another guy who must have been drafted so high so many years after that.
Love Dontrelle Willis, just as a person, as a personality, and I mean, Rookie of the Year in 2003, and was then the big year for him was 2 years later after that. Finished second in the Cy Young Award voting, 22 wins, 5 shutouts for the Marlins, 170 Ks in 230 some innings. So and ERA 2.63, and you can't ask for much more than that. And it was the phenom. If there was anything close to Fernando Mania in Miami, it was Dontrelle Willis mania, I think. And when the thing that made him such a flash in the pan in that regard, flash fish in the pan, something.
Thank you.
It was when he left for Detroit. At age 26, he had won 68 games in 5 seasons. I know there's a lot of numbers, but then after that, from age 26 on, four wins total the rest of his career. So that if you were ever counting on him, you ever thought he'd get the magic back, you were sadly mistaken.
Yeah.
That feels like the kind of like you take him in like the last round and about the late 2000, like 2008, 9. Maybe you're like that. Maybe just one more Dontrelle.
Yeah,
maybe
gonna sort it out. Yeah.
Well, it's.
I have to ask, do you think Rosario, the Rockies catcher, was a bit of a stretch here? Or is that just for people who had them in their keeper league and their NL only and were really hoping he was going to pan out?
I'll tell you what, absolutely not a stretch. I was taken in hook, line, and sinker, to use more fishing and water metaphors.
Thank you.
I mean, Rosario, you look at a catcher. Again, he's playing in Colorado, so you think maybe if his performance decreases a little bit, regresses a little bit, he's still got that built-in advantage. And 4th in the NL Rookie of the Year voting in 2012, hit 28 homers, and a catcher.
Yeah.
And again, we're talking about how slim pickings the catchers were. He was gold, and he was playing some like first base too. And so you love those catchers that like to play or that are allowed to play other positions. And I mean, he was one of my keeper guys that I hung on to for way too long, just thinking that he would get that magic back.
Yeah.
That is really a theme of fantasy baseball, especially as I said in the early days when you had to pick 2 catchers. Any kind of sign of offense from a catcher was just like, please, like just such a huge bonus. And I feel like if you had 2 good catchers back then, especially when it wasn't a mixed league, you had to have been a champion or at least like a top 3, in a league like that, because it just, I remember we should just have a draft of garbage catchers when you had to draft from only one league.
Yeah.
Guys
beyond the top 10.
I remember a strategy one guy used in a league where you had to have 2 catchers was his first 2 picks he took catchers. I think he took like Piazza and Pudge, like around the bend or something, because he was like, the rest of them are so bad, and everybody else went, oh shit! Like what do you do now? Like all the other 11 guys were like scrambling the whole pool.
I think using a general fantasy analysis, catchers are the tight ends of baseball.
Yeah.
Like that's the guy.
Absolutely.
You decide what round am I going to grab Yolmuto? What round am I going to take Sal Perez
kicker?
I got to jump. You have to jump ahead to get those top guys. Even today, obviously, it's
right. And the difference between the top of the pool and the bottom of the pool is huge.
Yeah.
Below deck.
Thank you.
Exactly.
I appreciate that. I really
Your
appreciate
teams are
that, Mike.
underwater if you can't get a good catcher. Right?
You're drowning in terrible statistics.
Wow, this is fantastic. If this was a live show, we'd just see the listenership dropping. It's like another water pun and I'm gone. I'm gone with these guys. Listen, no one appreciates a pun more than Matt Kippen. Chase Headley, I also want to bring up because Chase was a guy. I think he went to. He started off in San Diego. How did it go? San Diego, then the Yankees. When was it? What was the pattern there? Yeah. And wow, a lot of hype about that guy for sure.
Well, and I don't think there was a whole lot of expectation surrounding him, and then all of a sudden he leads the National League in RBIs in 2012 and hits 31 homers, and all of a sudden we're saying, wow, Chase Headley, not bad. You know, and he'd never had more than 14 homers or 64 RBIs in a season otherwise. And so then he leaves San Diego, the Yankees get him, and you're thinking, I think he was a left-handed hitter, right? And then the short porch and everything, the Yankee Stadium, I mean, it's made for that. And
it can't miss.
Exactly. He's going to drive in 150 or something, but no chance. No chance.
No.
And I was trying to remember what is the money he was making when he went to New York because of all the hype that came in. Exactly the exact right time to go to New York and try to cash in. It's 2014. He goes over there. It sounds wow. Yeah. Oh wow. Yeah. He was a switch hitter, as it turns out. Okay. Yeah.
So he had plenty of opportunities to take advantage of that.
With the Yankees, he signed a 5-year, $52 million contract.
Well, congratulations.
Yeah.
Chase.
Good for him.
Good for him. He goes 11 homers, 14, 12, goes back to San Diego for like a couple games basically, or whatever, 27 games, and leaves the game. But well, he cashed in, that's for sure. That's another guy. That's another guy probably has a yacht right now. Thanks to the Yankees. Yeah. I'm trying to think. So Steve, hey, look at his list. Also, like, who do you think? Is there anyone we missed? Is there anybody you remember back and kind of go, I can't believe you guys missed this guy? Anyone that we hadn't mentioned?
Well, a few of them I was thinking about, and just again from playing fantasy baseball and hunting through those stats in USA Today for the weekly stats on Tuesdays and Wednesdays, reminded me of Garrett Atkins was another guy.
Colorado
with the Rockies. Yeah, I really, that one year that he had in 2006. Which was the year I think the Rockies made the World Series, hit 329 and almost, had 29 homers, 120 RBIs. All of those were career high numbers. And you're thinking, again, the same sort of thing. Mm-hmm. This guy in Colorado, he's the starter. He plays every day. He's money, and just couldn't really live up to that. Another guy that I thought about in terms of not necessarily Brady Anderson-ish, but maybe Brady Anderson light, was Eric Burns. Right about that same time, with the A's, had 21 homers, 103 runs scored, 50 steals, or maybe it was the Diamondbacks. He played with a bunch of different teams. Maybe the Diamondbacks year was the big year for him. But I remember he'd be like on the highlight reel every day. It seems like making a flopping catch in the outfield. Or doing something, hitting a big home run, stealing a big base.
Yeah, it was 2007 with Arizona. Yeah, you're right.
Arizona. Yep.
21 homers and 50 steals. Yeah.
That was another one. I guess we could include Mark Pryor in this. In that,
I thought about it, Mark Pryor too.
That huge season, when the Cubs made it to the NLCS against the Marlins, and Pryor won 18 games, and his ERA was under 2.5, and 245 strikeouts. That talk about the low strikeout totals. Mark Pryor would just blow you away, and so he did that, and it reminded me of the flash in the pan type, because he never could stay healthy enough to even come back and approach that.
I thought Atkins was Atkins. I think that's a great choice. And I also think in the American League, Joe Creedy, similar, like third base, and like he crushed for like 3-4 years, and he faded in much a similar way. I'm not sure. Yeah, it was pretty much the same era, like early 2000s. Another guy you're like, you forget about those guys, but how monstrous those seasons were, and the potential, and especially in certain years, we know, like position availability when doing fantasy. Catcher we talked about, sometimes third base, you're like, well, this is gold when a guy like that comes up.
Yeah. Another guy that I thought about was Morgan Ensberg from that same type era. Talking about third base. Had with the Astros 36 homers and 100 RBIs. Like, where did he go?
Yeah, he fell off.
It was I think when we had Allison Footer on the show, she was talking about, and we talked about him briefly, just about how he just kind of lost everything, just went away. Like he had everything, and then he just couldn't hit it anymore.
Yeah, that's right. She said he was a real overthinker, right? And he just started to get into his own head, and it all unraveled on him, which is terrible and fascinating at the same time.
I think, as we all know in life too, when you ask yourself, why is it going so well right now, it's going to start going bad.
Right. Don't think.
Yeah, Sandy.
Don't think, just throw.
Sandy, your original version of the draft.
What's that, Matt?
Your original version of this draft. You were fresh. You're like, I got Rafael Percal. I got Chuck Whibley.
Yeah, you're right. That's what I thought was going so well. And then I realized, no, it's time to trade it in and get Bill Plantier out there.
It was a fine choice. Bill Plantier was just a fine choice.
So I think Steve, you've looked at the list though, and you feel like all those guys belong there. Or there's anybody that we haven't mentioned that didn't belong?
Absolutely. I will say there was one. Who did I look at? One of the might have been. Oh, yeah. Was it Pat Listash? Oh, darn. Anyway, or maybe. Oh, yeah. Sean Estes talking about one. A fantastic season that he had when he made the All-Star team that one year. But in his great season, he had a 19 wins. He led the league in walks.
Yeah.
And so with a 3.18 ERA, his WHIP was 130.
Yeah.
Which would kill you in fantasy league.
There you.
So I was looking at that. It's like, that's an interesting choice.
No kidding.
He was good in his own right in one way, and then still when he was good, he was bad.
Yeah.
If you lead the league, so what was it? So what did you say his ERA was that year? The WHIP was a high. It was
like 3.18 with an ERA with a 130 WHIP.
Yeah. So what's going right for him? I mean, it's
wins.
Yeah, wins. So he's got
probably his strand rate. When runners would get on base, they just didn't score.
Yeah, he was just getting a lot of batted ball luck at the right time.
Yeah,
well, the Giants' defense sucked, and a lot of those were unearned runs.
Right.
Maybe that was it.
Oh, yeah, right.
If they won, I mean, they weren't giving up a whole lot of extra runs, I would imagine.
Yeah.
That's 19-5.
Yeah.
Wow. Yeah, that's crazy. And of course you would dive in
and that ERA helped you too. It's just the WHIP would have balance things out
a lot of innings, so those ratios you just pound those ratios.
181 strikeouts, you could say there. And oh wow, yeah, looking at all these numbers, I think it is that he just got ground balls at the right time, and as you said, probably unearned from going through the defense. That is a mystifying year. That's like a mysterious year.
Yeah.
Let's
and that was at Candlestick too, so maybe the ballpark had an impact as well.
The wind.
Here is the deal. If we get John Jaha on this show, obviously zooming in from his yacht, Steve's coming back as like also, right? Like Steve's also got to be here.
100%.
Kinda
100%.
it's almost like a finder's fee. You get to be on the show again when Jaha's here.
If we could do it live from the yacht, like if he invites us all to go down there, shoot a special episode from the yacht, I think that would be great.
And just to be clear, he will not be in Australia.
Yes, right. Not with Dave Nielsen down in Australia. Maybe
Nielsen, maybe
Nielsen and her buddies. But you're talking about that year with Nielsen. That '96 Brewers team had great offense on that team. The pitching was like Ben McDonald was like, I think, their ace at that year. But still, those guys could definitely bash and then mystify everybody with that kind of went away and disappeared very quickly. This is kind of putting you on the spot, Steve, but thinking about, or even the guys thinking about, who are guys that you took in one of those years, if you can remember having those guys in those years, and were like, I got them when they were that flash. I got them when they did that one great year. Do you guys remember any of those?
And benefited from that rather than being reactive?
Yeah. Later on, you stunk because you took that guy. You know. Because
I had Rosario for the good and held on to him too long, like hoping he was going to come back. But let me look through the rest of these guys.
I'm trying to think, because I feel like Listash has always come up with me as someone I have a positive reaction to. So I feel like back in the day, I drafted Listash and was like, maybe with those steals, I don't know what it was, but that guy is one of those guys. But
I know I had Garrett Atkins for several years.
Okay, yeah.
And maybe too many of them, but I got a few of those good years.
I'm trying to track if any of these guys kind of even gave hints that they were going to have that kind of year. And it feels like many of them there was no hint that they were suddenly going to explode or to become big or whatever. I'm not really sure. But it seems more like they had, like we said, we have two guys who were rookies that flamed out after even just the rookie year.
I noticed that one of the things that a lot of those guys had in common was that they peaked in the first 2 or 3 years of their careers and had those great years. Fernando Tatis Sr., another guy on one of the lists, came over from Texas and then was the starter at third base every day for St. Louis in '99 and hit 34 homers and drove in over 100 runs. And then, never more than 18 home runs in a season ever again. So what happens to those guys? I think it's you get to the major leagues. I don't know if it's you get a little comfortable or what, but there's always somebody that's coming to take your job, and it's just a matter of when they take it. And sometimes you're hardly getting started, and somebody else comes along and supplants you.
Right? That's exactly it. And Tatis always just to go counter to Moneyball theory. He always looked like a good baseball player. He always looked like he was going to go up there and absolutely crush it and do all those things right.
He was modeling jeans.
These modeling jeans. Thank you so much. Thank you. So we're getting down to it. We got to figure this out. It's judgment time. There's 3 teams before you, Steve. Which team do you give the crown of flash in the pan champ to?
All right. As much as I like the Tatis, Wilkins, Listash, and Estes team, and was very impressed by the selection of John Jaha, who has to be the captain of Team 3.
Thank you.
I feel like the Team 2 with Brady Anderson and Willeen Rosario and Dontrell Willis was maybe a little bit higher than the other two and deserves the crown.
Okay, excellent. That's Matt's team.
Congratulations, Matt.
Thank you so much. I
picked an Oriole.
It helps a bit of the pain of having kept Will and Rosario too long, right?
Yeah. Invested a lot in there, so this really eases that. I feel good.
That is awesome.
It only took how many years?
Yeah,
it took 20 years, 10 years.
Finally paid off. I just want to make sure before we go, Steve, that when you said John Jaha was the captain, you were making another reference to boating. Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I just want to make sure that everyone out there got that. It would have been terrible had I won, I will say too, because I had to submit a second list, but it was worth it to get Jaha out there. Steve, thank you so much for being on This Day in Sports. Really appreciate you being here. We're heading into fantasy season, so we're gonna have end of the year. We might have you back to go. Who were the guys this year?
Yeah.
Who were the disappointments?
Also, I'm sure.
We're starting a fantasy yachting draft in July, so hopefully we'll have you on to help us with that one too.
All right, I'll have to do some research, but I will definitely come on with you.
It'll be great.
Thanks, Steve. Appreciate it.
Thanks so much. Enjoyed it, fellas.
Thanks very much.
Okay, I got nothing to say. Nothing to say coming out of that one.
What's to say?
Well, if I win in that scenario, it's broken, and if I lose, then it's just like, well, I didn't have a chance because it's
tough but fair. Tough but fair. Would you say?
Tough but fair is fine.
Tough but fair.
Tough but fair is fine.
Yeah.
Yep. Well, that brings to a close another episode,
mildly successful episode.
This day in miscommunication sports. Still fun to say some names. Hey guys,
sure. Yeah,
I think this is great because, like, often at a fantasy draft, you love it when somebody in the old days showed up with the wrong magazine, or nowadays you got your computer, you can get on there. But we're talking about back in the '90s, so somebody shows up with the wrong magazine and just sort of has to
just guess.
You got to go for
got to go for it. Absolutely do. Well, April 4th, this day in sports, I've been Sandy Jobin Bevins.
I'm Matt Kippen.
I've been Mike Shera.
And this has been enjoyable for us. Hopefully it was enjoyable for you. We'll see you again real soon.